Before we start this episode, I just want to give a friendly reminder that the episode was recorded on Saturday. I did not have time until Tuesday to edit it, so our playoff predictions are a little bit outdated. Then the news of RailCats owner Joe Eng buying the Mississippi Braves AA team ballpark, however you want to spin that one, in the Frontier League, those will not be commented on as that was after the fact of the podcast, and I didn't realize that Chuck wanted to do a emergency podcast before I tweeted out what had happened. So those will be a big topic of next week's episode. I'm hoping that we can get more on a consistent basis of like a Sunday Monday kind of deal instead of Tuesday or Wednesday. It also depends on the work schedule, so that also varies into it. So that's all I got. So sit back, enjoy the episode, and enjoy the rest of your day. Hello, RailCats fans, and welcome back to the RailCats Talk podcast. He's Chuck Polarek. I'm Kyle Svetich, and today I'm just throwing my arms up in the air today. I have Notre Dame losing NIU. The RailCats, when we go over these stats, you're going to be about as shocked as I am with some of these things. Hockey season is around the corner. You got American Association playoffs going on. You got three games of game threes going on. There's a lot going on in this little bit of an off season for the RailCats at least for about a week. Chuck, you have more insight into the last week of the RailCats playing, as I was on vacation in Colorado, so I didn't really watch or much of any of the RailCats games, especially against Chicago. What was your viewpoints on those games?
You missed all the good wins. I mean,
Uh,
there were some really good wins for Chicago.
yeah, that the Chicago. There we go. The
Yeah,
Chicago,
yeah.
because the RailCats ended the season on a 9 game losing streak. So there's that. Yeah. This RailCats team is the worst in franchise history, going 30 wins and 70 losses. They are the fourth team to reach the 70 loss mark in the American Association. Two other teams were travel teams. The only other true American Association team was the Texas Air Hogs, and they did it 3 times in 3 seasons. So we're on a very high list here. And a last in a lot of categories. I'm pretty sure in the offensive categories that I chose, we were last in 10 of the 16. And then in the bottom 10, we were 13 out of the last 16 in those ones. And in pitching, we were last in 10 out of the 12. So if we really want to wrap up how bad this team actually really was, yeah, the proof is in the pudding.
Those statistics are very painful. But
Ye-
I've got a good statistic for you, and that is that the Dock Hounds have won as many playoff games this year as the Railcats.
Well, the doc the
And
well
the Milkmen. The
well
Dock Hounds and the Milkmen won as many playoff games as the Railcats did this year.
Well, ever since the Dog Hounds inception, and I'm pretty sure the Milwaukee's inception, the Railcats have played this many playoff games.
That is correct.
So I would really have to say that I wouldn't be gloating that one
Well,
around, because
we're
that's a
just
little.
we're just efficient. Why play if you don't have to?
Yeah, you're right.
That's all.
I,
I'll tell you what. It's yes, those are awful statistics. And yet it's still shocking because when you look at it, a lot of those games, I felt like, okay, we're close. We're right there on the edge. Uh, is this team the ultimate underachieving team? That's the bigger question, I think. Is this the ultimate underachieving team?
Yeah, I would agree. So I think the out of the 3 years that under Lamar Rogers' regime, this was probably the highest pinnacle of excitement. They were last year was a little bit here and there, but I think there was a lot of people that were a little bit higher on the Railcats. There was some questions, especially like the starting rotation, which kind of came to fruition that didn't really work itself out. There was some questions, but offensively, I don't think we were supposed to be this bad, and we were that bad.
I don't think that Lamar would have put this team on the field if he would have known that it was going to be this bad.
No.
So I mean, it came to a shock to everybody. I will tell you this. I did say goodbye to a bunch of guys, and I did tell a bunch of guys thank you for all the work that they put in. Because even though the statistics don't show it, it doesn't mean that they're not putting forth the effort or putting forth the work. And in doing that, I did get a bunch of guys that said, "Hey, Lamar's talking about, bringing me back next year," or I was invited to spring training for next year, or various different conversations with a bunch of different guys. So it seems as though that conversation's being had with individual players, and we'll see. Um, there were some bright spots. We do have some shiny new toys on the team
Hmm.
that would like to carry over. But I think that we got to assess why this wasn't successful and make sure that we don't do it again. That's the hard part.
Yeah. I think before we get into that, I think first off, I know I put out the statement when I added you in with it, a letter from us to the fans and to the RailCats in general. There's so many people that we can thank for just the season in
Absolutely.
general. Um, all the way from Joe to the players to jump on to the podcast, for having great off the field experience. Like I said, the on field experience may have not been the best, but the off field experience has always been good. The hospitality, the safety, everything from the nitty gritty of making sure that the fans, the customers are happy when going to the game, besides the product on the field, and that's something that is going to be addressed. But yet again, I want to say thank you for the RailCats, for allowing me and you to do this, to reach out to the players, to get in contact with the players, especially the American Association. Really, at any time, they could be like, "Hey, nope, sorry, you can't do this," and they have every right to do that. So, we just want to thank them on that portion of it. The players, they do. Even if the results that aren't on the field, these players do work. They're trying to further their career. It could be one of those that it just didn't work out in Gary, and you have a team in a different league that's like, you may be able to fit into our system, the way we play. They're still working towards something. It's not, they just didn't mail it in and call it a year. They could have done that two-thirds of the way in, but they
Some of the
didn't.
fans, right?
These players still work. Obviously you had two players with you when you saw their work ethic. They had probably one of the two higher work ethics on the team. Not saying that everyone is terrible work ethics on the team, but they're two more of the leadership in that aspect of it. Uh, it, it's simple as jumping on a podcast after a game or on their off days, that kind of stuff. So we do appreciate that. Those who
Absolutely.
are listening and that kind of stuff. So I this isn't a full on let's just strip this team down and bash them, because I don't want it to fully be that way, but I also can't say let's turn a blind eye to what the season was, and we still have to dive into this, because I don't think avoiding the conversation of how bad the team was is a healthy aspect, because I think the fan base, that 10% of the fan base, is highly upset, and they have the right to be. So I think where we need to start this conversation is at this point, for everyone to understand, the team is stripped to bare bones. There's no one on the roster. No, there's no one on the roster. As soon as the season's over, they're clean cut, unless they want to an offer sheet kind of deal where they have the rights to stay within the American Association, but they can also go to the other leagues, as that was a part of the deal last year that rolled into this year about players that can go to other leagues to have that variety. So they can't just be, they don't have to worry about trading. They can just pick up and go somewhere else. If you do see a sign, if it's not a signing, I forget what it's called, um, that they're with the RailCats, that's only for in within the league if they could end up signing somewhere else. So let's just call it what it is. The roster stripped down. There's no one left on the roster. Starting from ground up, what are some of the changes that you would like to see?
Um, well, uh, boy. So this year, one of the big problems we had is that our power hitters turned into just base hit hitters.
Hmm.
And so I would like to see uh, definitely a power hitter at first base. Um, I would also like to see a power hitter as a DH, and perhaps guys that can flip flop between the two so that they're not constantly out there.
Hmm.
I don't necessarily need a stud of a first baseman, but I would like to see a power hitter. Um, One thing that I did notice this year, we had talked about it before over and over again, that, it's not uh, that Gary is not a very hitter-friendly park.
Hmm.
However, um, if we get we saw that there was a lot of
Hmm.
guys that out this year. And if we could get some power hitters at first base, that would be great. A DH. I'd also like to see more left-handed hitters in the
Yeah,
in
I
because
would agree.
that porch is shorter, and I think you can take advantage of that. Whereas, you're playing 50 games at home, I think that should be more of a priority to have left-handed hitters, not switch hitters,
Yeah,
but left-handed hitters.
I
Uh,
oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
so those are my thinking as far as that goes. Offense was great. I would like to try to figure out a way to limit those errors. We did have a lot of errors, um, but for the most part, they were stupid errors. Um, and then it comes down to pitching, right?
Hmm.
And I feel as though pitching was not dominant at all. We had a couple of guys that could go out there and you were like, okay, this is going to be good. I think that Josh Smith was the only guy that lasted the whole season where I felt that way. Um,
Hmm.
and, Nate was kind of, he was hot and then all of a sudden he cooled off, and that had a struggle there for a bit. Um, so consistency in pitchers. I'd love to see us have 3, 4 guys that could go 6 innings on a regular basis and still have us in the game.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think. I think the biggest issue with bringing in these quote unquote power hitters, granted, when I look at the top slugging percentages, Miguel Sierra really turned his season around. He ended with a 268 batting average, slugging of a 506, on base percentage of 340 for an OPS of 846, which is really good in those sabermetric realms. Carlos Rincon was also pushing at 800. Jose Contreras was pushing a 760, and Marcos Gonzalez was pushing a 782. So, in as far as the OPS averages there, and then after that, really, it all kind of falls off. Like those four players were one of the best in slugging and on base percentage and our OPS systems here. So like those four players, yeah, I think the biggest surprise out of those four is probably Jose Contreras.
Yeah.
I think he could give you that nice versatility at first that you wanted, and a DH role. He has his flaws at first, but I think he has a good glove at playing first. Working on getting to the bag and moving around, that sort of thing that I think we both can agree that he needs work on. But I think like the fielding aspect of it, he's been lights out. I mean,
Yeah,
you
but Contreras isn't a guy that I'm scared of when you get up to bat. Ryan Herman
no,
scared of when you get up to bat. Uh, Teeter is a guy that I'm scared of when you get up to bat. Crook is a guy that I'm scared of when he gets up to bat. You know what I mean?
I
Brian
know I
You know,
I
these
get,
that's the guy I'm looking for. Is a guy that you're scared of when he comes up to bat. You're like, okay, this is a guy I have to worry about.
yeah. I, I'm just saying he would be. I think looking at those four players, I would be okay if you say, all right, let's run it back with those four right now. I would be okay with it. I think Miguel Sierra had a couple, at the beginning of the year it was like, I really don't think he should be part of the team. He had the injury, and then it kind of turned around for him. Rincon was out for a while. He was our offense productive player. Uh, you know, Olivier Bersabe really, he kind of fell off. He was like the highlight, and he just kind of fell off, but he has really good defensive abilities at third. So, it's one of those like, it's okay. There's a lot of good spots from this team, but
Mhm.
when you push it all together, it just didn't work. And
Right.
it leads to the question of, do we need to look at maybe you play 50 games at home? Realistically, if you win 50 games at home, you lose 50 games on the road, you're more than likely going to make the playoffs. So, do we worry about trying to reinvent the wheel here and get all these big power hitters in? Or maybe
No,
we kind of peel it back a little bit and get more of those players that can find the holes and the gaps and have the speed and kind of run it back. You need a nice mixture. You can't just strictly go one side or the other. But I think it could work. I think if you just kind of play to your ability. I mean, look at some of the teams in the playoffs right now. I mean, you have King County that just went through, and they don't have, they don't have huge power numbers. You have Winnipeg that's a really good pitching staff that doesn't have a lot of power numbers behind it. Sioux City, Fargo are probably the other two that I would kind of like. They have John Nagowski for Sioux City, but then you look, Cleburne, Chicago has the power hitters, Lake Country, which Lake Country is now out. As of recording, this is a Saturday, and some of the games are still going on, so all these scores aren't final quite yet. By the time this comes out, but the point behind it is you see all these teams that are in the playoffs, they're built to their fields, and I feel like we're the odd team out in that aspect.
oh, that's why I said. I mean, we had what, one left-handed hitter?
Yeah.
No, that's it. And yet that's our sweet spot in the field. I
Hmm.
mean, we didn't play to the field this year. I don't think that we did. Um, you know, the uh I don't know that I would bring, that a ringtone is going to come back.
Yeah.
Uh, I also, it's like, okay, he doesn't come back. What did he give me out in the field? Not much. What did he give me on the base paths? Not much. He got on base.
Mhm.
That's what he gave me. So if I can find somebody else that would play outfield that'll get on base, I would also throw Geo in that mix. That I would want to have Geo back. Though he didn't get the batting average that he had last year, he did have 30 stolen bases.
Mhm.
And he is one of those guys that he can get on base. I would say that we lost a lot more games if we did not have Geo in that lineup,
Oh,
knocking in those.
I agree. I mean, just talking about Geo in the first place, you know, this year I think you saw more of an offensive production from him as far as, okay, so last year he had 33 RBIs, this year he had 38, which is five more than last year, which is he played 94 games last year, but then stolen bases he only reached 30. I just feel like this year was a down year for him in the sense of he was thrown all around the lineup because the lineup wasn't producing. And last year he was more of the guy that scored runs. Last year he scored 75 runs. This year he only scored 40. Like he was a big contribute to that. He stole 37 bases last year. He only stole 30 this year, which okay, seven less. It is what it is at that point. But I'm just saying the he just wasn't put in. He was put more in a spot to try to drive runners in versus being the guy to score the runs.
Yeah, I was watching this Pete Rose thing on TV, and I was watching Pete Rose get these hits, and his hits were right over the infield into the outfield, solid hits every time, right?
Hmm.
That's what Gio was last year. Gio was either walked, hit by a pitch, or he looped the ball over the infield and got on base, stole some bases.
Hmm.
This year, that changed. Instead of being the looping it over the infield, getting the base hit, he had power, which got it to the outfielder, which got him out.
Hmm.
And he flew out an awful lot this year compared to last year. Now, I don't know where we find that statistic at, but I feel very confident that that happened on a regular basis. And last year, that didn't happen.
Yeah. I mean, it, you could quote unquote say his power numbers weren't last year he had the two home runs. He had three more doubles last year and one more triple than last year. Uh, a lot more hits than he did last year. But like I said, some of those power numbers are skewed, just because depending on the
Well,
situation.
I'm not saying power numbers. I'm just saying that when he hit the ball, he hit it harder.
No, no, no.
You
I
know
guess
what I
what
mean?
I'm getting to is when you what you're talking about, what I'm talking about. You may say, well, he did this, this, and this, and I agree with you that he did this, this, and this. But then someone's going to look at the numbers and go, well, last year he had better power numbers.
Right. No,
That's not that. I was going along the lines of that some of the statistics you can't just look at because what he did this year versus last year are two different things. He hit into more flyouts this year than he has in years past. I guarantee you on that. It's just one of those that I think he was put in the situation where it was like, okay, instead of me just blooping a single over, I need to get this ball in the gap and I need to hit it as hard as possible because there's no other production behind me.
yeah, yeah. I mean, that's that. Or when he got on base, he had somebody that was slower in front of
Yeah.
him, so he couldn't steal any bases. I mean, there was a lot of different things. He was set up in the lineup to come up with those numbers that he had this year versus last year.
Yeah.
That's unfortunate because I'll tell you what, there's no harder working guy than Gio Diaz in my mind.
No.
Um, so I could see bringing back or trying to get back Gio. Um, you know, you've got to figure out the special formula in this, and you know, it feels like this year we just I don't know. I don't know. I think I'm saying the same thing that every other fan is saying is
Yeah.
I don't.
I don't know. It's just one of those things that it's difficult to really look at. This.
Contreras, where we put Contreras in the outfield. He kind of struggled out there.
Mhm.
We had Contreras at third base last year for a little bit. Basabe is better than him, but I don't think that there's very many third basemen that are better than Basabe. Um, so you really can't put him out there. But you really Contreras is a kid that you want to have on the team and you want to have him playing all the time so he can be successful. But you really got to find a place for him. And I don't think that first base or DH works for him, you know?
I think if you're going to base, if we're going to look at next year and we're going to try to incorporate more of speed and contact hitters, I would be okay putting him as a DH because he won't be a liability in the field, but then he would give you that one-off chance of being that power bat that you may possibly need. So you're not filling a DH role. You're keeping a power batter in the lineup without having a defensive liability.
Or maybe you put him in right field.
You could. I just, it's just one of those, again, this outfield, well, I would say center field this year with Abatini. You need to bring that guy back just based on his defense alone. I don't care what numbers he gives you outside. He had a stellar end of the season with the catches that he had and the way he's able to command that outfield. Uh, so that's one player I would just say just mark it in the books and bring him back. You can figure out where you want to put in the lineup, however you want to do it with that. But I think having a really good defense and having an offense that can get you some runs. I really, realistically, yeah. I don't know. I'm just at the point to where I'm like, do we just scrap the entire roster and just don't even worry about bringing anyone back at this point? Because
The other
I
thing
just
too,
everyone was below expectations. There's not a player on this roster that based on the numbers. I'm just saying based on the numbers that
not a player on the roster that you're like, wow, he had a good year.
yes,
No,
there's just not
I
one.
agree with you. I agree with you.
And it's not a knock on anyone. It's just that's what it is at the end of the, and we can't candy code it. I'm sorry, I can't candy code it. I mean, I think we were basically kind of called out a couple weeks ago on one of the national uh independent baseball podcast of us candy coating things and having our eyes
What?
blinded. That's nor here nor there on that one. I think I answered that one in a couple podcasts ago, but I, we also have to find a fine line because we do interact with the players and the coaches, and we can't.
You can be honest, but be respectful at the same.
Yes, I think that's what I try to go for. Or-
Yeah.
uh, But again, at the end of the day, I
It's easy
think
for us to unhumanize,
yes.
right? When we're talking sports, it's very easy to unhumanize things or dehumanize it.
Yes.
Um, and I do my best to not do that because these are guys that are going out there and working 6, 8 hours before they even get on the field. There are guys out there that are putting in everything that they've got, and I appreciate that.
Mhm.
And so, you know, same thing goes with Lamar. Hey, he's putting in just as much time as everybody else trying to get this, and it's just not clicking, and that's fine. We just got to figure out what those flaws are, where the troubles are at, and get back at it and figure it out. You know,
I'm
but no,
starting. You may be on the other end of the scale on this one, but the more I think about the season, the more I look at the numbers, the more I'm starting to say I don't know about Lamar. I
well,
it's starting to just slip away. I think a lot of that has to come down to the roster turnover wasn't quite there. And I know we talked about with, maybe bringing in some players that had visas, you don't want to necessarily just cast them away. But at one point, and I know we talked about you can't replace a shiny gold coin with another shiny gold coin in this league. It's not possible. But I feel like when you feel the season slipping away, at some point you start bringing in some of these college players that they did bring in that have a little bit of life to them maybe
yeah.
and give you something for the next year.
Here's the interesting thing: is that this is the comment that people made to me. Um, you sure did turn over, or you sure did change out a lot of players. Sure did turn over the roster a lot. Like, no, no, we didn't.
Mm-mm.
Um, Well, seems like you're always got new players out there. No, no, we didn't. But these are the comments that other team fans are making to me about Gary. And I'm like, no,
No.
didn't do that.
Uh,
You know, we
let's
we had the same players for a majority of the season.
so if we want to look at the aspect of players that were basically on opening day roster that are no longer on the team, Valera, Del Valle, Decker, Fields, Bockley, Galino, um, that is basically from the offensive side, and I think Noriega, um, pitching wise, uh, Olivero, Danny Olivero, Munoz, Vitriago, and that's it.
Yeah.
So all the rest, I would say you could put in some of these players that weren't turnover from like the Winnipeg. A lot of the turnover comes probably from the Winnipeg, um, when we went to Winnipeg because those players were on the roster and they got taken off. You know, Waldo was one of the players that wasn't part of that. Pinzetto wasn't part of that. I think Renrord wasn't part of that. That's just based off of like the batting. So like there's not a lot of turnover.
No,
You had Perez.
we had problems, and we just stuck with the problems,
Yeah.
hoping.
And I think that's the frustrating point to me was we had glaring issues and it wasn't like, hey, we got to figure something. I just feel like there wasn't enough uh a turnover, trades or something because you see it with other teams when something wasn't working, they were just like figure it
Oh,
out.
you can go to 2 years ago with Cleburne. Cleburne made the playoffs. They were like terrible the first 30 games. They got rid of most of their lineup and flopped it and ended up making the playoffs. You can look at the Valley Cats this year. They were awful. They traded or got rid of a bunch of people, and next thing you know, they're in the playoffs. You know, it's not unheard of that when you get 30 games, you have a good grasp of what your team's looking like and you figure it out. And that is something that we did not do. Now, why we did not do that, I don't know. I don't have that answer. Should we have done it? Yes, I absolutely think that we should have. Last year we did. Last year we had a first baseman that we overpaid for. He did not perform. We got rid of him after 30 games. Hey, but what was different this year?
A quick a quick remark on that. I did some quick math. All right, the
Uh-huh.
Railcats released 24 players. Half of those players were because of Winnipeg.
Yeah.
Chicago, who's in the playoffs right now, turned over 25 players, and I don't think they had any issues with Winnipeg.
No,
And majority, so 13 of that was offensive players, and then the other 12 was pitchers.
yeah,
Like some of these pitchers only had one or two, three, like very minimum numbers, and they're like, "Hey, gotta get out of here."
yep.
So I'm just saying, I think that's where the frustration for me when I'm sitting there thinking about the season, going, how do we not turn this around? I just felt like we hit a point in the season and Lamar just threw his hands up and said, "All right, just run it through. We'll worry about it next year."
Okay, and we did hit that, and I think we hit that way too late. All right, but I was saying this when we start seeing transactions coming back when we got back from Cleburne. Why why is it that we're trading or we're getting rid of fielders
Hmm.
when fielding was not our issue? Our issue was that we are pitching,
Yeah.
right? And you look at the transactions. I look at the transactions just about every day, and you will see multiple teams that are in the playoffs dropping pitchers and picking up pitchers on a consistent basis. And you have to ask yourself why. I'm guessing that they're trying to get better. Even though they're good, they're
Hmm.
trying to get better. And if that's the case, why are we not trying to get better?
Yeah. No, just breaking down the season, the monthly record. So the Railcats went 16 and 15 in May. And then they went 12 and 13 in June, and then went 7 and 17 in July, and 5 and 23 in August, and 0 and 2 in September. Like, I feel like after July should have been, you're still at the halfway point necessarily. You still had a month, you were still in the playoff race, and you still went 5 and 23 in August with minimum turnover.
Yeah, yeah. It,
That's the
but
part where
just think of it this way: if you stay still and everybody else is moving forward, you're moving backwards,
yeah,
and that's what we did. So those statistics don't that doesn't surprise me. That
that,
being
I,
said, we gotta look at this. We've got uh what three games going on right now.
mhm.
I don't know what the scores are. I haven't looked. I don't want to look. Don't ruin it. All right. Uh who do you feel? what team do you feel is the best to come out of this whole thing? You're looking. See, you're not supposed to do that.
Well, actually, I don't have the playoffs pulled up right now. It's just the tricky part for it is it's the game threes and anything. The last time I checked, I'm pretty sure Cleveland was winning by one. Sioux or Winnipeg was winning, and I think Fargo was winning.
Winnipeg's winning 10-3.
Yes.
Cleburne is winning 1-0.
Okay.
Fargo is winning 6-3.
Okay, that's what it was last when we first started
So
this.
yeah, so looks like Fargo, which I picked Fargo. Looks like Cleburne, which I picked Cleburne. Looks like Winnipeg, which I picked Winnipeg.
I yeah,
And I picked St. Paul. So
I think the sleeper of this one is King County. I think they have secretly been the sleeper all year. They have done things under the radar. They haven't been high. They haven't had too many highs. They haven't had too many lows. They basically dismantled. They didn't dismantle because they won by one run on Friday, but basically dismantled Lake Country, shut their offense down. And if they're able to do that against Cleburne, and then you go up against it probably going to be Winnipeg because I just don't see Sioux City or Fargo really offensively being able to handle the pitching. If you're having Fargo, then King County may be one of those sleeper ones where like they have the offense, they could probably compete with the pitching side of it, and they may sneak away with it.
uh,
But I'm still going Cleburne, Winnipeg, and Cleburne winning it all. But I'm not swaying away from that until someone tells me otherwise, like Cleburne or Winnipeg gets knocked out. But I just I feel like this year it was a lot of visa problems that could have been avoided if we didn't have so many visa players. If that's a culture that you want to build because you were probably used to that culture, the Venezuelan players that played in the Houston Astros organizations because of the international signings and all that, and you didn't have to worry, and that's the culture you're comfortable with. I understand that, but that culture's not working here. And you can't, if it's not working, you have to go back to the drawing board. And you've had, we'll say, 2 years of a full drawing board to work with. Because the year one, yeah, again, we keep going back to year one. He was hired in March. You basically had a month to prepare for the season, and it hit you like a flying brick, and you had to go through the season and figure it out from there. Again, it's like a college program. You can't take a really crappy college program and win the national championship in 2 years. You have to build it, but you also have to be taking steps forward. And every year we've taken steps back.
so yes, I see where you're coming from on that. When I talk to people that have looked at this roster that are far more knowledgeable than me,
Mhm.
okay, and their response at the beginning of the season is, wow, you guys have got a great team. And then this is what happens, right? When I've got umpires that have said, and I've heard the comments, we thought we were going to umpire this game and it was going to be a lot, or these games, and it was going to be a lot closer than it was. What's going on with you guys? Um, I mean, these are the comments that we're getting. So I can't necessarily say, well, Lamar, you got us into this because obviously other people outside of this group is saying, okay, this is very weird that this happened. You guys should have been a lot better than this. Now, that being said, right, and I've even got players on our team. I mean, heck, they both stayed here that were like, wow, this is going to be exciting. This is a really good team that we got going here. Um, so going back to that drawing board, I think that you've got to say, okay, first year, you're kind of getting your feet wet. You're trying to learn the process. Okay. The second year, you're you came up with the game plan and you said, okay, this is what I'm going to try, and it didn't work. Okay. Um, I think you've got to change that process. Your process didn't work this year, so you've got to come up with a new one. You've got to come up with a new plan. Maybe that plan is not getting a bunch of Spanish speaking players. Maybe that plan is going, you know, US based for a bunch of players. Maybe that plan is to go younger and not getting a bunch of experienced guys that maybe don't have that much of a fight in them anymore. I don't know. Um, but I think that you go back to that drawing board and you say, okay, let's wipe it all out. We know we've tried that hasn't worked. Let's try something different. But when we do that, as fans, we've got to say, okay, I see that there's effort being made here. So if this does not work also, then hey, the changes were made. Now we have to try it again. It's okay.
And going back to your beginning of your statement, looking at the roster at the beginning of the year, because I tracked it very heavily. I wrote articles about it very heavily. This team offensively was supposed to be what Cleburne is
Right.
offensively. I would fully agree. That's how this team almost reminded me of what Cleburne was last year. They had should have been all offense and pitching was so-so.
Yeah.
I,
But but
that's
but even with that, the pitching was like, hey, we've got two really good fresh pitchers that were high rated,
Oh,
and
I'm just saying everyone saw it. I saw it. You saw it. We all saw it. That's not the matter of the fact. It's at the end of the day, there wasn't that production.
no,
So what this leads into is when you look at the season at its face value, and you take the off season leading up to it, and then you take it to what's now. Are we blaming? Not blaming them. Are we putting more fault on the players' execution, or are we putting on it on the coaching staff for the lack of quote unquote effort of turning over the roster?
I think that there's in a season like this, there's plenty of blame to go around. And I
And
don't think,
or option C, that works too.
and I
I'm
can
just
tell you that I don't think that Lamar is skirting any blame, and I don't think the players are skirting any blame. You know, every player on that team you could talk to, and every single one of them would be, "Hey, I'm just not producing right now." There's no excuse for it. Every single player would say something like that, and it's like, hey, I mean, I just said bye to one the other day. My numbers weren't there. I got to get better. And what do you do in the off season? I'm going to work on getting better. I got to get better. There you go.
yeah. I,
There's plenty of blame to go around, all the way up and down. You know, the only bright spot that I saw in this whole season is that I found out that they had pulled pork and pulled chicken. So, so that was my bright spot, and it was a very good bright spot. Not going to belittle it at all. Um, yeah, it just, hey, what do you do? You
yeah,
know,
no.
it's over with. We have to take a break. We got to kind of uh, let it sink in a little bit. Let's not be rushed to judgment, pull triggers on things we don't need to. Let's look and see what it is. I mean, look at Winnipeg. Winnipeg goes from last to first with a new manager that knows what they're doing, right? Knows what they're doing. Now, the other hand of that is you had another manager that's been in the league for years and still came in last place, right? So anything can happen.
I think that was just a bad move on Winnipeg's part, hiring Greg in the first place. Just it's the aspect of the league has changed, and obviously you need different. What Greg has done in the Frontier League is still acceptable because that's what he's used to. You have to find the right management, and I'm not saying there have been plenty of people that have said that Lamar Rogers is a great manager. I'm not taking that away from him. I'm not, that's none of this. but it's one of those is the right fit for him and Gary. Is what
Right.
the question's coming out to. I don't me and you both can sit here and I think I will die on that mountain that I think Lamar Rogers is a really good manager. I think he knows how to manage the game. You know, there's still a lot to learn. I think maybe the coaching staff around him may not quote unquote be the best. He hired a bunch of his friends that he used to work with and said, "All right, let's see if this works. And if it works, it works. If it doesn't, it doesn't." Still a lot of trial and error. Nothing's perfect. No one's perfect. It's going to happen. I just think that the clock is starting to turn. It's
Yeah.
starting to like, all right,
Yeah.
and I'm gonna take this podcast, this episode of the podcast, or this episode to be more negative than positive.
Okay.
And then from here, we just gotta air it out. Like it's to the point, the frustration, the season's over, be able to digest the season, air it out, and then later on we'll start talking once we see transactions, the positives behind it. Because I can't be negative the entire time because then I'm gonna run myself mad. Uh,
You're already driving yourself mad.
I know. I
That's
well, listen. Well, cover the RailCats. They haven't been successful. The White Sox, I haven't watched a lick of White Sox because they are probably worse than the RailCats. I'm pretty sure if you put both of them up together, that RailCats might win that one. I don't know how, but they might win that one. I
RailCats are
I
trash.
I'm a Notre Dame fan that has to live on the edge of every football game because we can't beat non-ranked teams for some God knows what reason. I'm a Blackhawks fan that they're working on their way up from ground up. I'm a Colts fan that we haven't done anything in how many years. Like I'm just at this point, my fandom is just driving me insane. Like
Hmm.
it's just
I think you might need to get a therapist or something
I
because this is, I don't know how
I
to
thought
deal with
maybe
this.
doing this would be my therapy, but I think it's just driving me down a worse hole.
I
I'm the Mad Hatter at this
Wait,
point.
now hold on a second. You do have the Indiana fever.
Yes. Okay,
So
that I have been watching a lot of their games. I am a huge Caitlin Clark fan, but I really like Aaliyah Boston too. I like her. So I you got them. They're making the playoffs, so there's something to watch there. I mean, hockey's right around the season. I
hockey,
hockey's hockey's my one sport where I'm like, okay, I get excited about it, but I'm not. I dive deep into it. It's my other sport that I dive deep into, but like I don't. I used to project out about it, but not so much anymore. I'm like, I just keep this to myself. This is my reach out platform. Um,
I will have a couple other things I want to add to this
go
that I
go.
thought funny or interesting tidbits to this, right? I did reach out to Alex about ticketing.
Hmm.
Uh, have not received back when they plan on putting their tickets up for sale or their season tickets up for sale. That'll be exciting for me
Yes.
when we can get our family passes for next year. Hopefully, they haven't raised the price because they've raised it the past 2 years, but definitely the best bargain you're going to get for your dollar.
Hmm.
Um, any kind of sporting event in Northwest Indiana, RailCats have definitely got it beat. That two, I talked to two employees. I'm not going to mention, and both of them listen to the podcast. So I was like, wow, that's two employees that we hadn't talked about before. So I was like, wow, that's really cool. Um, so yeah, that I was like, oh wow, that's nice. So that was good. Um, I think that the sucky thing about this year is that we lose, but the good thing is that there's a lot of things to build on.
Oh yeah,
There's a lot
we
of
got
things.
listen. I needed one just one episode of
I know. I know.
just opening up the
I
wound and
I
then slapping a band-aid over it and calling it a
I
year.
I invited some Chicago fans to the last series of the year. This one couple and their two kids, they showed up on Sunday and got to see the fireworks. They were amazed at how awesome the fireworks were. So that was really cool. It was exciting to see that they got to
Hmm.
enjoy the fireworks. They ended up staying for the whole game, so that was cool. They were like, "Man, this is so nice that you don't have." everybody like ganging up on you, and you don't have to wait 15 minutes in line to get food.
Hmm.
So that was exciting. I really liked that. Also had a couple other people from Chicago that showed up. Also enjoyed themselves. So I'm doing my part to try to get fans from the other stadiums to travel to Gary to see that hey, Gary's a good place, and fun to watch a game. Um, the this year the concessions were great.
Hmm.
I can't think of a single time, well, maybe one time that I went and had to wait in line and missed half an inning. So that was great. Food is always good. Um, the fact that Joe showed up to a couple of games and he's out there on the field with people for the first pitch and taking pictures with people. He's up in the walk of the concourse talking to people, shaking hands with people. That was fantastic seeing that, you know. The fact that he even came on the podcast to talk with us was fantastic. We got a lot of players to come on and
Hmm.
talk with us this year. So a lot of cool things, a lot of good things this year. Unfortunately, we lost and the game sucked, but I'm sorry, man. I can't be negative about it. I got to say that we had us, me and you, had a lot of good positives.
Yes.
Me as a fan, as somebody that likes going to the RailCats, and got to have an experience with a lot of great people. I, I mean, hey, even Chicago Dog Fool Mike showed up to a game and was waving his flag and stuff. Uh, Stu from the Chicago Dogs brought me a bag of Chicago Dog stuff, and then the next day brought me some more stuff. I mean, the interactions with the different guys and the different teams were fantastic. Uh, so I can walk away saying that hey, I struggled with this team, but I'm sorry, but the positives way outweighed the negatives for me.
Well, and like I said, just wanted to
I know,
get just
I know.
just wanted to get this is more for that 10% of the fan base that is frustrated with the product on the field, and this was just this podcast is dedicated to that frustration because we both understand it. The podcast going forward are going to be a little bit more lighthearted. They're going to be more positive because there is a lot of positive things to talk about this year. Mostly off the field stuff, but and there's things that we're going to look forward to. I mean, I think we both agreed once we have players that are signed and we kind of run through their statistics, kind of what we started to do halfway through this year was to get the players on and get to know them. I think we get to know them a little bit better in the off season, get to understand their style, and then once the season starts, having more of that in-depth baseball conversation while the season's going on. We've talked about getting some front office members on here just to kind of talk about their experiences at the steel yard and what they want to hear from the fans. Like there's a lot of positives to take away from that, and we have 265 days basically to go. So
That's the disappointing part, man.
I know that really is the disappointing part. You have 100 games and you have to wait 200 basically 265 days. I know you have a couple off days and blah blah, but it's not easy quick math. All right, 265, well, probably more like 240, but
I
here nor
know.
there on that one. Um, but yeah, there's a lot to go with it. Just just a rough season in general.
Let it out. Let it
It,
out. It's
it's
okay.
it's over. We can put that one in the bag. We can chalk it up as, oh, that did happen. I don't remember. So we'll put it up that way. As the podcast episode winds down, Chuck, do you have any final thoughts?
Oh man, not not any final Railcats thoughts.
Any thoughts?
Well, no. Uh, I th you know, I like guys on just about every team. Um, Guys that I've had really good conversations with and what have you. Uh, I for some reason I would like to see Logan Watkins really stick it to Cleburne at the end.
Mm,
I don't know why. I don't know why I feel that way, but I just really feel like I would love to see Logan just have uh that final
Hmm.
smile in Cleburne, and kind of like, hey, that ride back after winning and be like, yep. Because I'll tell you what, I think that he is a really good manager. And for Cleburne to drop him like that, and but hey, the other side of it is, the manager they got now, I mean, he was a stud player and he has a lot of connections. So I don't
Yeah.
know. But I think that would be the good, like, the final, gotcha.
That would be a really good storyline as well. Um, that one, but really fun. So on my vacation to Colorado, the where we were staying with her great aunt and uncle, I was downstairs in the living room and I saw a picture of the Winnipeg Maroons, who in 1940 was part of the Northern League as a professional baseball team. I looked it up and I was like, oh, I should have took a picture of it, but I totally forgot to take a picture of it. But yeah, I learned some interesting facts on my trip to Colorado.
Baseball. That's some good
Yeah,
baseball.
I know.
I I learned that to get into Canada, all you need to have is a birth certificate and a driver's license. So, as an American citizen, so
Yep.
I was talking about possibly making a trip to Winnipeg next year,
Oh, there you go. That
or maybe just driving to Canada just to say that I've been there before and turning around and coming back.
yeah. Well, could be an
So,
interesting one. So you're saying a possibility of All-Star game in Winnipeg would be a nice, even though this year it's in Fargo, but that's beside the point.
I've got, so in one of the games, Greta showed up with her family, and they were actually going to Kane County to watch Kane County against Fargo.
Hmm.
But they decided to come to Gary because her grandma is a big Gary fan.
Oh.
And so I'm like, that's great. I'm glad that other people out there realize how awesome Gary is. So they came to our game, stayed for the whole game on Sunday or on Saturday, and
Mhm.
then went to Kane County to see the rest of their game.
Oh, wow.
So that was really cool. But I did make a mention to Greta that, hey, All-Star games in Fargo, and if I go to Fargo, we're going to need a place to stay. So she goes, well, we live an hour away from the stadium. And I said, well, you have plenty of time to move closer.
Well, hour realistically, an hour is not that bad. I mean,
Right. Well, and then I said, do you really live in North Dakota? And she goes, yeah. I said, no, I mean, do you really live there? Because you spend more time outside of the state than you do in. She's traveling all the time. So yeah, hey, it's there's a lot of opportunity, a lot of options next year. Uh, I think that if I am as excited as I am right now, a lot of those things will come true. So we'll see. You have got to find another stadium to go to, my friend.
Ooh, I do.
Where are you going to go? I need you to put right now one stadium you're going to go to, and we're going to make sure that it happens.
Well, the other closest option is going to be Chicago. That would be
Is that your pick?
that's going to have to be my pick. It's going to have to be.
That's weak.
I,
Okay, that's fine because
I have to
then
say,
the following year,
unless listen, unless something changes, I have to work within the parameters that I'm given.
that's true.
So, it may be another trip out to King County and a trip to Chicago, maybe out to Milwaukee, but things would have to change on that aspect of it. But the Chicago would be that's the one I've wanted to get to just to go because it's closer. I've actually flew out of O'Hare because I literally flew out of an airplane. I looked at Impact Field, but that's nor
All
here
right.
nor there on that one.
All right. So you're down for Chicago.
Yes.
Definitely going to a Chicago game next year. All right. I'm going to hold you to it.
Okay.
And uh, I don't know for me. I would like to try a new field, but I don't know that next year is going to be the one. But we'll see.
Yeah. Well, maybe,
All right.
maybe,
That's
maybe
it.
this. Yeah. Who knows? Well, anyways, that's gonna wrap up the podcast. I'm Kyle Svetich. He's Chuck Polarek. You can follow the podcast on RailCats Talk. Really, right now, I'm mostly gonna be on my own personal Twitter handle, which is just K Svetich, my last name. Chuck, I know you have your own, but you're not really big into floating that around. So mostly going to be on there.
You'll
Some
find.
of this, yeah, you'll find it somewhere along the lines of there. I do tag you in it when I do post the
I know you
podcast,
do.
but
Yep. That's
that's
the only
just I gotta give you credit. I can't just just say Chuck Polarek, and I just gotta
that's the
give
only
you
time I get mentioned is when it's on there. So I'm like, oh look, oh Kyle said something about me.
well, I gotta be positive, right?
That's
Anyways, that's gonna wrap up the podcast. I hope you enjoy the rest of your
everybody.
evening, whenever you're watching this, and go Cats.
Okay, it's
The 0-2. Swing and a miss, strike three. Wrap this one up in green and white.